As a first-time buyer, you can borrow anywhere between 4.5 all the way up to potentially 6 times your income, but it will depend on your income and your expenses. So if you've got a massive car finance, then that could affect things slightly. If you've got lots of kids, that could affect things, but as a rule of thumb, between 4.5 and 5.5 times your income. In terms of the best mortgage for a first-time buyer, I mean, it's always down to individual circumstances, but 9 times out of 10 for a first-time buyer, I recommend a fixed-rate mortgage, just so that you know exactly what's coming out of your bank account every month for something that's going to be new for you. You might not have had bills like that come out before, so it's always good to know that your payment isn't going to be going up or down, it's going to remain the same for a fixed period. In terms of the process of getting a mortgage for a first-time buyer, well, the first step would be contacting a mortgage broker, hopefully me. We'd have a chat, we'd go over your outgoings and your income, work out how much you can potentially borrow, combine that with how much deposit you've got available, and work out the purchase price that you can potentially look at, so that when you're going on Rightmove, you're not looking at properties that you can't afford, and equally you're not looking at properties that are far less than you could potentially afford. That's really the first step in getting a mortgage. A first-time buyer generally needs a minimum of a 5% deposit before they can get a mortgage. If you've got more than that, sometimes you can qualify for a slightly lower interest rate, but as a minimum, you really need to have 5%. There are some ways around that. So there are a few lenders that can consider using a loan. So if you've got no deposit at all, potentially you could get a personal loan for that 5% deposit. So it's even worth talking to us if you don't have a deposit saved up just yet, because there can even be ways around it. In terms of the best mortgage term, it's going to be down to your individual circumstances, but for a lot of first-time buyers, it's clearly going to be the first mortgage they've ever had. So often it makes sense to take a long term in order to keep the monthly payment as manageable as possible. This gives you the flexibility that you can then overpay on your mortgage in order to reduce that term. But a lot of first-time buyers will often take a 35 or 40-year term in order to keep the monthly payment as low as possible. In future, we can then potentially look to reduce that term, because it's always best to have as short a term as you possibly can afford. Because the shorter term means you're paying interest for a fewer number of years, but it's clearly crucial that you can afford that monthly payment.